The crisp morning air carried the scent of freshly cut grass as I strolled down the neighborhood sidewalk with Buddy trotting beside me, his golden fur gleaming in the sunlight. His tail wagged with the carefree joy of a dog who had no idea we were about to run into trouble. "Excuse me." The sharp voice cut through the peaceful morning like a siren. I barely had time to react before a figure stepped onto the sidewalk ahead, arms crossed, lips pursed into a thin, disapproving line. Karen. Even if I hadn't known her name, everything about her screamed authority, self-appointed of course. Her pristine lawn, her two perfect flower beds, the way she always seemed to appear when someone was doing something she didn't like. And right now, that something was me walking Buddy. "That dog," she spat, pointing an accusatory finger at Buddy like he was a menace to society, "is not allowed here." I blinked, momentarily thrown. "What?" Karen sighed dramatically as if explaining something painfully obvious. "There are HOA rules, young man. No dogs over 25 pounds. Buddy, sensing the shift in mood, sat down at my feet, his big brown eyes darting between us. "I read the HOA handbook before I moved in," I said, keeping my voice even. "There's no rule about that." Karen's lips curled into a smirk. "Well, it's an unwritten rule." Unwritten. Meaning she had just made it up. I let out a slow breath, trying to keep my frustration in check. "That's not how rules work." Her smile didn't falter. "It's how our rules work. And if you don't comply, I'll have to issue a fine." My fingers clenched around Buddy's leash. "You can't just make up rules on the spot." Karen's eyes flickered with amusement, the kind of satisfaction that comes from holding power over others. "You'd be surprised what I can do. I'm the president of this HOA. And if I say your dog is against the rules, then he's against the rules." The sheer arrogance in her voice sent a wave of heat up my spine. She wasn't just enforcing policies, she was targeting me. "I'm not getting rid of my dog," I said firmly. Karen sked, shaking her head as if I were a disobedient child. "I suggest you reconsider. Fines pile up quickly. And if you refuse to comply, well," she trailed off, her meaning clear. Non-compliance meant escalation, possibly legal action or even an attempt to force me out of the neighborhood. Buddy whimpered softly as if sensing my tension. I exhaled, forcing myself to stay calm. Losing my temper wouldn't help. "Have a great day, Karen," I said coolly before stepping around her. I could feel her glare burning into my back as I walked away. By the time I reached my driveway, my mind was racing. This wasn't just about Buddy, this was about power. Karen had spent years lording over this neighborhood, bending the rules however she pleased, and now she had decided that I was her next target. Well, she'd picked the wrong person. I spent the afternoon digging through the HOA handbook, highlighting every relevant section. Nowhere, did it mention a weight limit for dogs. If Karen wanted to enforce a rule, she'd have to prove it existed. That evening, I went door to door talking to my neighbors. Most were polite but hesitant, their eyes darting toward Karen's house as if she could hear us from inside. "She makes life miserable for anyone who crosses her," one older man muttered, shaking his head. "Trust me, son. It's not worth it." But it was worth it. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, I had gathered a handful of signatures from the few neighbors willing to stand up to her. It wasn't much, but it was a start. I called for an official HOA meeting, presenting my case with the signatures as proof that people wanted a fair say. Karen sat at the head of the table in the community center, her expression one of bored amusement as I laid out my argument. "There is no rule restricting dog weight," I said, placing the open handbook on the table. "You can't fine people for something that doesn't exist." Karen leaned back in her chair, tapping her nails against the wooden surface. "The board can vote on amendments as needed." I frowned. "That requires a majority vote." Karen smiled, and suddenly 3 of the 5 board members, her closest allies, nodded in agreement with her. "Motion to amend the handbook," she said sweetly. "All in favor?" 3 hands shot up. Motion passed. Just like that, the rule was official. Rage boiled beneath my skin, but Karen wasn't even looking at me anymore. She had already moved on, acting as if I had never even been a threat. I had lost. For now. As I left the meeting, my jaw clenched, I caught sight of Karen walking toward her car. She was laughing with one of her board members, completely unbothered. And that's when I heard it. A faint, desperate yipping sound. I turned my head slightly, scanning the area. The noise was coming from somewhere close. Karen's house. The sound came again, high-pitched, distressed. Not a single bark, but many. Buddy pressed against my leg, ears perked up. Karen, the woman who had just spent an hour arguing about dog regulations, had dogs on her property? A chill ran through me. Something wasn't right. The sound lingered in my ears long after Karen had driven away, a sharp, desperate yipping that didn't belong in a quiet suburban neighborhood. I stood frozen in place, listening. It wasn't just one bark, it was a chorus of them. Different pitches, different tones. Some frantic, others weak. Buddy's ears twitched, his body stiff beside me. He heard it too. I turned my gaze toward Karen's house. It was the kind of place that looked perfect on the outside. White picket fence, manicured lawn, flower beds arranged in precise symmetry. But something felt off. The barking came again, muffled but insistent. I narrowed my eyes. It wasn't coming from inside the house. It was coming from behind it. Curiosity burned in my chest, but I forced myself to walk away. I wasn't about to get caught snooping in broad daylight. Not with Karen already watching my every move. That night, long after the streetlights flickered on and the neighborhood fell silent, I slipped outside with Buddy. The air was cool, the kind of crisp stillness that amplified every noise. I stayed in the shadows as I approached Karen's backyard, my heartbeat thrumming in my ears. Her fence was tall but not impossible to see through. I crouched near the edge, peering between the slats. Then I saw it. A shed. Bigger than a typical storage unit, sitting at the far end of her property, hidden behind neatly trimmed hedges. A heavy padlock dangled from the door. And then, movement. A shadow shifting behind the grimy window. I sucked in a sharp breath as my eyes adjusted. There, in the dim glow of a single flickering light, were cages. Rows of them. Stacked on top of one another. Inside, crammed into the tight, rusted bars, were dogs. Small, frail. Some curled into themselves, others pacing anxiously, their ribs pressing against matted fur. A sickening wave of realization crashed over me. Karen wasn't just enforcing ridiculous HOA rules. She was running a puppy mill. My stomach turned. All those times she had acted like she despised dogs, yet here she was hoarding them like inventory, using them for profit. Buddy let out a low, uneasy whimper. I placed a hand on his head, steadying myself. I needed proof. Carefully, I pulled out my phone and pressed record, zooming in on the cages, the filthy conditions, the dogs trembling behind rusted bars. It was enough to confirm my worst fears, but not enough to take her down. I needed undeniable evidence. I slipped away, my mind racing. The next morning I did my research. Puppy mills were illegal in most states, but people still ran them in secrecy, skirting regulations, bribing inspectors, or moving their operations frequently to avoid detection. HOA neighborhoods, with their strict rules and privacy, made the perfect cover. No one suspected a thing. Karen had built a kingdom on intimidation, silencing anyone who might speak up. But now I had something bigger than a petty HOA dispute. I had something that could destroy her. Still, I knew Karen was smart. If I reported her now, she might find a way to cover her tracks. I needed to make sure when the time came she had no escape. That's when I got an idea. Lisa. She lived 3 houses down, a former vet tech who had spent years fighting against unethical breeders. If anyone would help me, it was her. I knocked on her door that afternoon, shifting my weight as I waited. When she answered, she looked surprised. "Hey, Jake." Her eyes flickered to Buddy, who sat obediently at my side. "What's up?" I hesitated, glancing around before lowering my voice. "I need to talk to you. It's about Karen." Her expression darkened instantly. She stepped aside, letting me in. The moment I explained what I had seen, Lisa's face paled. "She's running a puppy mill?" she whispered, horrified. I nodded. "I saw it myself. I got some footage, but I need solid proof. If I report it now, she might find a way to hide it before anyone investigates." Lisa ran a hand through her hair, exhaling sharply. "That explains so much. I always thought it was weird how she hated dogs but never seemed to complain about people having small ones." I leaned forward. "I need help. I need to catch her in the act." Lisa's jaw tightened. "Then we need a buyer." It took me a second to realize what she meant. "She won't sell to just anyone," Lisa continued. "If she's running an operation like this, she'll be cautious about who she does business with. But if we can get her to sell us a dog, we'll have direct proof. A transaction." I nodded slowly, the plan forming in my mind. "And if I record it, her taking the money, handing over a sick dog, she's finished." Lisa's eyes gleamed with determination. "Let me handle the buyer part. I know how these people operate. If I approach her right, she'll never suspect a thing." A thrill of anticipation shot through me. This was it. We were setting the trap. But as I left Lisa's house, a chill crept down my spine. Because if Karen had been willing to rewrite HOA rules just to get rid of my dog, I had no doubt, when she realized what we were up to, she'd come after me next. Lisa worked fast. By the next morning she had set up a fake buyer profile, one that would seem legitimate to someone like Karen. She posed as a distant relative of a breeder, using carefully crafted messages that made it clear she was looking for inventory rather than a pet. The kind of language that would put someone in the puppy mill business at ease. By noon, Karen had taken the bait. She responded, Lisa told me, her voice tight with barely contained disgust as she read the message aloud. I can arrange something discreet. Cash only. No questions. I clenched my fist. The fact that she was so nonchalant, so completely unbothered by the cruelty of what she was doing, made my blood boil. But anger wouldn't win this. Patience would. We set the meeting for that evening. Karen had chosen a secluded spot behind an old gas station on the edge of town, far away from curious neighbors. That alone told me how deep she was in this operation. She wasn't just selling a few dogs under the table. She knew what she was doing was illegal. Lisa and I drove separately, keeping our distance. I parked across the street, staying low in my seat as Lisa pulled into the lot. My hands shook as I positioned my phone to record, my pulse hammering. A few minutes later, Karen arrived. She stepped out of her car, dressed far differently than her usual pristine HOA president self. Gone was the pearl necklace, the stiff blazer. Instead, she wore a hoodie pulled low over her face, sunglasses masking her sharp, calculating eyes. Lisa approached her, casual but confident. You got the pup? She asked, her voice perfectly neutral. Karen didn't respond immediately. She opened her car door, reaching inside. A second later, she pulled out a tiny, trembling puppy, a frail little thing no more than 8 weeks old. It whimpered in her grasp, its small ribs protruding beneath patchy fur. Lisa inhaled sharply but recovered quickly. Karen smirked. This one's fresh stock. Healthy enough to sell, but I'd move fast before it gets sick. My stomach twisted. She wasn't even pretending to care. Lisa handed over the cash, marked bills we had prepared in advance for law enforcement. Karen stuffed it into her pocket without counting. That was all I needed. I hit send on my phone, uploading the recording directly to the cloud. The moment the transaction was complete, Lisa nodded. Pleasure doing business. Karen chuckled. Keep my number. I have more coming in next week. That was the final nail in her coffin. Lisa turned and walked away, cradling the shivering puppy to her chest. She barely made it back to her car before she lost it. She's a monster, she whispered, stroking the puppy's fragile body. A complete monster. I couldn't argue with that. But soon she wouldn't be a problem anymore. We didn't wait. As soon as we were safely away, we sent everything, the video, the messages, the transaction details, to an animal rescue organization that worked closely with law enforcement. Within an hour, an investigator had responded. Karen's name is already on our radar, he said. But this is the concrete evidence we needed. We're moving in tonight. Relief crashed over me. After all the stress, all the manipulation, Karen was finally about to face real consequences. But there was one more thing I needed to do. That evening I took Buddy for a walk, right past Karen's house. She was outside, tending to her precious rose bushes, oblivious to the storm heading her way. She saw me and smirked. Enjoying your last few days here? She called. I tilted my head. Last few days? She dusted off her gardening gloves, eyes glinting with amusement. Your HOA fines are stacking up. You'll either pay up or get pushed out. I always win, sweetheart. I let out a slow breath, barely able to contain my grin. Funny, I mused, I was just about to say the same thing. Her smirk faltered. Then, as if on cue, a line of flashing red and blue lights lit up the street. Karen turned, confusion twisting into panic as police cars rolled to a stop in front of her house. Officers emerged, followed by members of the animal rescue team. What is this? She stammered. One of the officers stepped forward. Karen Whitmore, we have a warrant to search your property. I didn't bother hiding my grin. Karen spun back to me, her face pale with realization. You. Before she could finish, an officer guided her aside, already barking orders to begin the search. The rescue team moved swiftly, making a beeline for the shed in her backyard. Karen's kingdom was crumbling. And I had a front row seat. Karen's breath came in short, panicked bursts as the officers swarmed her property. The quiet, pristine facade of her home was now flooded with flashing lights, her perfectly manicured lawn trampled under the weight of law enforcement boots. Neighbors peered from their windows and gathered at the edge of their driveways, whispering, their faces illuminated by the chaos unraveling before them. I stood on the sidewalk, Buddy at my side, watching as the house of cards Karen had so carefully built collapsed. "This is a mistake," she screeched, twisting in the officer's grip. "You have no right to be here. I'm the HOA president and I demand." "You demand nothing," the officer holding her back said coldly. "We have a warrant and we have evidence. You're done." The shed was forced open, the rusted padlock snapped like a twig. A nauseating stench billowed out, filth, decay, suffering. Even from a distance, I saw the officers recoil, their faces darkening with disgust. And then came the sounds. Whimpers. Weak, desperate barks. Scratching. The officers moved quickly, unlatching cages, carefully lifting out dogs, some barely clinging to life. Their fur was matted, their ribs visible beneath layers of grime. The sight of them, broken and trembling, sent a wave of fury through me. Lisa arrived seconds later, her car screeching to a halt. She ran toward the rescue workers, immediately stepping in to assist. Her hands were gentle but steady as she lifted a frail puppy from its rusted prison. "How long do you think she's been doing this?" one of the officers muttered as he examined the rows of cages, the filth, the horror. "Too long," another responded grimly. Karen's screams turned into pleas. "No, you don't understand. They're just waiting for new homes. I was helping them." One of the animal rescue agents turned, glaring at her with open hatred. "Helping them?" she spat. "These dogs are starving. Some of them have infections so severe they may not survive the night. You're not a rescuer. You're a monster." Karen's face twisted, and for the first time I saw it, the raw, unfiltered desperation. The realization that there was no way out. She turned to me. "You," she hissed, eyes wide wild. "You did this. You set me up." I didn't move. Didn't even blink. "You tried to destroy me over a dog," I said calmly. "You thought you were untouchable. But now everyone sees you for what you really are." Her face contorted, veins bulging in her neck as she lunged. "You little." An officer caught her mid-motion, twisting her arms behind her back. "That's enough." Click. The sound of handcuffs locking into place echoed through the night. Karen froze, her entire body going rigid. For all her arrogance, for all her threats, this was the moment it all became real. The HOA rules, the fines, the intimidation, none of it could save her now. "You can't do this," she shrieked as they pulled her toward the waiting police car. "I'm the president. I make the rules." The door slammed shut, muffling her protests. And just like that, the reign of Karen was over. The rescue team worked tirelessly, loading the surviving dogs into vans, administering emergency care. Some were too weak to stand on their own. Others, despite their condition, wagged their tails when they were finally held with kindness. Lisa wiped a tear from her cheek, her expression hardening as she turned to me. "We did it." I exhaled slowly, the weight of everything hitting me all at once. "Yeah," I said. "We did." Over the next few days the news spread like wildfire. Karen's arrest made headlines, not just locally but across multiple media outlets. People were horrified, outraged. The HOA board wasted no time in publicly condemning her actions, stripping her of her position. And then the internet did what the internet does best. Someone dug up old footage of Karen screaming at a neighbor about their Christmas decorations. Another person found clips of her threatening to fine a teenager for having a basketball hoop in their driveway. Memes exploded overnight. HOA Karen became an internet legend. Her mugshot, wide eyes, frazzled hair, circulated everywhere. Someone even printed it on a t-shirt with the words "I make the rules" beneath it. As for me, Buddy and I took our victory laps through the neighborhood, greeted now with waves and approving nods instead of side eyes and whispered complaints. The HOA board, desperate to distance themselves from Karen's corruption, quietly dropped all the absurd fines against me. One afternoon, as I sat on my porch watching Buddy chase butterflies in the yard, Lisa strolled up with a knowing smirk. "Heard they're holding an HOA election next week," she said. I raised a brow. And people are talking about how the neighborhood needs someone fair, someone reasonable. I laughed, shaking my head. "You're kidding." Lisa shrugged. "I'm just saying you took down the worst HOA president this place has ever seen. Maybe you should take her spot." I glanced at Buddy, then back at her, grinning. "Tempting," I admitted. "But if I'm running things, I'm instituting a new rule." Lisa tilted her head. "Oh." I leaned back, stretching my arms. "Dogs get free rein." She chuckled. "Now that's a platform I can support." As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in warm shades of gold and crimson. I let out a deep, satisfied sigh. Karen had spent years trying to control this neighborhood through fear and manipulation. But in the end, she was the one who had been caged. And for the first time in a long time, the neighborhood, my home, finally felt free.